Okay. Number 8 reason how we know leftists hate black people: the welfare state.
Mm.
Um, there is a 22. There is a couple. There are a couple quotes I want to preface this with. Thomas Sowell. Thomas Sowell is a economist, a brilliant man, and he's a former Marxist. This is what he said. He said, "I have never understood why it's greed to want to keep the money you have earned, but it's not greed to want to take somebody else's money."
Mm.
He also said, "The first lesson of economics is scarcity. There's never enough of anything to satisfy all those who want it. The first lesson of politics is to disregard the first lesson of economics." Lastly, he says, "The welfare state is the oldest con game in the world. First, you take people's money away quietly, and then you give some of it back to them flamboyantly."
Mm.
Uh, and the reason the welfare state is on here is because through the creation of these government programs that have been helping, they've always uh, targeted low income families, which in the early times of this country are Black Americans
Yeah.
and minority families. But uh,
And back to what you were saying is that's how Democrats won black votes. That's how they stole them from the Republican
yeah,
Party
yeah, yeah,
through the
yeah,
welfare state. They
yeah.
said, "Hey, we'll give you this."
The New Deal.
Yeah.
Before that, but yeah, so you have through the creation of these government programs and under the guise of aid and care, social welfare programs systemically target impoverished Black Americans, leading to, but not limited to, the breakdown of the Black family.
Mhm.
Um, because beneficiaries of these programs could only be making a certain amount, which gives justification for single parent households. It doesn't give any need to not have a single parent household. Um, and for all other issues that we see within the Black community in this country, see single parent households. Because you take, ultimately, that means there are no dads, there are no fathers. Um, Women get uh, awarded for having a certain amount of kids with a certain amount of income not being high, it has to be low. And so the government will pay. The government will be daddy.
Mhm.
And that perpetuates every issue we're seeing in the Black community today.
Yeah.
In communities that are predominantly Black. I hate the Black community, makes it
Yeah.
seem like a
Right.
monolith,
Yeah.
but
Right. Right.
in communities that are predominantly Black and impoverished neighborhoods, that's what we're seeing. And it starts with the welfare state. Going back to Thomas Sowell, I'm going to read a little excerpt from him, and that'll be the end of number 8. This is what he says. He says, "They're always talking about a legacy of slavery, and they use that as an excuse for crime and broken families and so on. Yet in the first half of the 20th century, you'd have a hard time finding 5 ghetto riots like that of Ferguson.
Hmm.
In the second half of the 20th century, you can choose from at least 100. If that is a legacy of anything, it's the legacy of something that came along in the second half of the 20th century. It is a legacy of a liberal left vision of the world and the policies based on it, both as regards law enforcement and welfare. Welfare alone has had an enormous impact, and it's not just the welfare itself, the material goods that are provided. In a democracy, you can't have a welfare system unless you first have a welfare state ideology that triumphs. And the ideology is non judgmental. It makes excuses for things that are wrong and it subsidizes things that are wrong. People have no idea that the Black community in the first half of the 20th century was, from the point of view of a common decency, miles ahead of the ghettos of today, especially places like Ferguson. Harlem, for example, in the 1920s was a place where many whites, including many white celebrities, frequented. Um, including many where many whites, including many white celebrities, frequented. And it was not only for entertainment, not and it was not only for the entertainment places for like the Cotton Club and so on, but places where they met with the Black elite of that time. Back then, no one was worried about being mugged. I was a grocery delivery boy in the area. On Saturday nights, I'd work until midnight and then I'd walk home. And he talks about the fact that he was like 100 pounds. Nobody tried to mess with him. It was a very different culture
Mhm.
than what it was today. The last thing I'll highlight for number 8 is this small clip that we did. I posted this maybe a year or two ago,
Mhm.
because in relation to welfare is this whole fight for what? Minimum wage.
Yeah.
Minimum wage. I'm going to play this quick clip that we posted on social media a year or two ago regarding minimum wage. Did you know that minimum wage was racist? That's right. Minimum wage was instituted as a way to keep Black Americans and other minorities out of the labor force. And even if the racist motivations don't exist, it is still a power play. It is still to make sure that those who own businesses remain the ones who own businesses, and those who are workers do not stay in the labor force. It drives poverty in our country. And listen to who the main victim of that poverty is.
Thus, the consequences of minimum wage rates have been almost wholly bad, to increase unemployment and to increase poverty. Moreover, the effects have been concentrated on the groups that the do-gooders would most like to help. The people who have been hurt most by minimum wage laws are the blacks. I have often said that the most anti-Negro law on the books of this land is the minimum wage rate.
Happy Black History? Economist, I don't know if he's still alive, but he was another economist at the time. And that he's highlighting the fact that it's an attack. Minimum wage is an attack on the Black family.
Right.
And you cannot have a successful welfare state unless you have subsequent policies like minimum wage laws that keep Black people in need of the welfare state.
Right.
That's number 8.